everybody. I wanted to talk to you guys about communication and boundaries to a certain degree, but most importantly, communication, because communication tends to be what we have kind of lost sight of in society. We all tend to be very busy and caught up in our own experience, and this has led to a major breakdown in communication. So different personality types will address communication in different ways. Many people are physical, time-based A-type personalities. They just want dates, times, and that's it. If you try to give them more information, like why you can't meet those needs, what you're busy doing, how you're feeling, oftentimes they will disregard what you're saying, or they won't have time for it, and they will cease communicating with you effectively. The other thing is when communication becomes all about feelings and all about your experience, and the necessary details get lost in the communication. So I feel this, I can't this, because of this, I'm going through this. They don't ask what they actually need. They tell you their struggle, but they don't tell you how to help them. So healing communication is basically saying, do you need me to hear you? Do you need me to be quiet? Do you need me to respond to what you're saying? Or do you want to have a reciprocal conversation where I relate to you and we both discuss how we feel about these issues, or where you can find common ground through relating? If someone is hurting, you can share times you've hurt, and that can help you relate. That can help a person feel more heard, and that can also lead to less name calling, judgment, shame, guilt, pointing out problems in others. When we share how we feel as opposed to what someone else is doing wrong, oftentimes we're pointing out what someone else is doing wrong because we don't like how they communicate and we don't like that methodology. As this continues and you engage this person further, oftentimes it will create more separation than connection because they will feel attacked. If you meet them with the same energy they're meeting you, i.e. I hear the R word thrown around a lot, that person's a R word, or racial slurs, or just a lot of labeling. So there's a lot of labeling that goes on, and this happens through inaccurate communication. When somebody doesn't understand the experience of somebody else, they will quickly write it off as irrelevant and not important. Or they will label it, stereotype it, so that they don't actually have to take it on. They don't have to learn about the other person's point of view or perspective or culture or background, because a lot of the times they're either so focused on what they're going through, or they feel their time is better spent on what they're focused on, whether that's making money, whether that's work, whether that's their experience, their family, their kids. These things all create really bad communication. And the more we write people off, quickly label them, and then disregard and minimize their feelings or their point of view or their needs, this will create a lot of disconnect, and your communication will become less and less and less effective. So this leads to boundaries. What I've learned with different personality types is, instead of forcing everyone to communicate the way I like to communicate, which is much more detailed, which takes into account dates, times, who's doing what, when they're doing it, I have a detailed personality, but this has also led me to being very observant and understanding the perspective of others. So I will look at it from multiple points of view. For example, if somebody needs me at 4 p.m., instead of saying no, that will often put people in their head, and they will either feel like you don't care, you're minimizing them, you're not reliable, you're not a good friend. So you need to give more information than just a no. But oftentimes when people are in desperation or in need of help, they feel like you need to prioritize them, and when you can't, they don't understand why. If you can explain why, oftentimes this will minimize the hurt they're feeling. They won't lash out at you or feel like you've let them down, and they can also understand your experience. But to do that, they have to be open to the two-way reciprocal communication. So for people who don't like a lot of detail, they don't want to hear my experience or what I'm going through, and I'm explaining what I'm going through to explain why I can't drop everything and be there. These are dynamics that often happen with people like myself who are empathetic, we're nurturers, we're caretakers, so people can get used to the idea that we're just always there and we're there to caretake them. This also leads certain personality types. There's many mothers, many people, I don't want to genderize it, but it happens more often with women who take caretaking as a major part of their purpose, their value, and they prioritize the care and needs of others and often put theirs on the shelf. And in doing this, we harm ourselves. Eventually, we will push and push and push to prioritize what other people need, to the point that we become resentful because we're not explaining our experience, so they're not used to caring about our experience. And you feel guilty explaining your feelings or your experience, and so you often don't, because this is a person that is so focused in the moment on their needs and what helps them, that they don't have time, or they don't feel like it's important to take that extra time to hear you and to hear what's going on. But if we take that extra time, you will actually find it will save you a lot of time in the long run, because when you stop miscommunicating with people, you find a way to find effective communication with those people. So someone like me who would like to tell you a novel on what I'm going through, I can shelf that and just explain quick details so that someone understands I'm not available, I'm at work right now, or I'm in the middle of a session, I'm sorry. Or I will be more direct. I'm sorry you're going through that. Is there something I can do to help? If they say, yeah, do this, then I can address that. Okay, well, I can't do that right now because of this, but I could do this. So I offer an alternative. If that alternative is not for them, they can say, no, that doesn't work. And I'll say, okay, well, good luck. I'm sorry. Let me know how it goes. And that's a way that I can respect them and their boundaries, but also maintain my own autonomy and my own feelings. And so I don't have to force a long conversation on them if they don't want to have it. However, I also set the boundary of saying, in the future, if you want to just discuss your feelings, let me know if this is a time where you need me to just hear you and say nothing. Let me know if you want me to understand you, or if you want me to relate to you and say, there's a time I experienced that, I know how it felt, and we go deeper into the feelings part of it, so that that person feels community, they feel accepted, they feel loved, and they feel heard. These are the kinds of communication that we need to start having. And there's nothing wrong with being direct. So there's a lot of stigmatizing going around. There's a lot of buzzwords going around like gaslighting and entitlement. And I'm not saying those things don't exist. I'm saying they're often quick labels thrown on people to justify why you and that person aren't connecting. And often you make it about their failures instead of your own. Many people don't want to reevaluate their approach and adjust it. And to do so, you have to do it in a way where agreements are made. It can't be all one way for that person's preferred method. But the only way to find a compromise in your communication is to take time to make those agreements, is to adjust how you communicate, to reevaluate how you're communicating. Look at, is this communication effective? What's getting lost in the communication? How do we fix it? That has to be a two-way conversation. So that can't just be me saying, well, you're too emotional, or you're too angry, or I tried to tell you, but you weren't listening to me. That creates less communication. They will shut down. They won't hear you. They'll think you're a jerk, quite frankly, and they will feel let down by community. They will feel more isolated in society. They will feel more victimized. They will feel more like nobody understands them. They're chronically having these issues, and they're really pretty simple issues at the heart of them. They come down to poor communication. Poor communication leads to isolation, and that isolation leads to anger, and that anger can lead to attacking society in general. Everyone around you becomes part of the problem. The cognitive distortions essentially will create this idea of all or nothing. Everyone hates me. Everyone always uses me. Everybody doesn't understand me. The everybody. Well, I promise you, everybody doesn't everything. That's not possible. And I will never be happy. I will never find a partner. That keeps you trapped in a box so that you don't have to try to change things, so that you don't have to feel like a failure when those things don't work instantaneously. When you change your approach and it doesn't always resonate immediately, people often abandon it. They want immediate results. And this has a lot to do with society, technology, and how things have changed. We've become cravers of instant gratification, but instant change. We want to lose weight in a month. We don't want to take 2 years to work out. We want to have healthy relationships immediately. We don't want people to fight with us anymore. We want it to stop based on 1 or 2 days of effort. And that is not communication, and that's not relating. People need time to get to know you and for you to get to know them. And that all takes time and effort. And so when I approach cases, people often want a plan and assessment done in the first 2 days. And I say, that's not possible. That's not how I work. Because to really understand my client, I need to see all of the dynamics. I need to know their past. I need to know their present. I need to know what they're struggling with. I need to know what they're not telling me due to embarrassment or shame. I need to know what they're capable of, how they like to communicate, what makes them feel safe and heard. All of that takes time, and for them to trust you and believe your motives. This is also a society that questions the motives of others. We're either someone's scamming us, somebody's trying to take advantage of us, somebody is wants 3 months instead of a 1-day assessment because they want my money, things like that. So again, when you can't communicate and explain the methods behind what you're doing or the reasoning behind the method, People will often make a quick judgment, a label, and then they will seek to change it immediately, hire somebody else, try something new, do a different system. Okay, this type of therapy doesn't work, let's try the next one. They don't see it through. The flip side of this is this idea of loyalty, that you pick somebody and you're stuck with them forever. That's also not true. And I'm not saying, I'm a very loyal person and I will stick probably bad things out way longer than most people, because I'm willing to keep reevaluating and re-looking at the communication. But if they are incapable of changing the communication and the dynamic has now become, I fix things for them or I'm there for them, but they're incapable of being there for me, then I have to put some boundaries into place and say, okay, when I have time, I can answer your questions in a very simple, fast form, but I'm not going to engage you on a deeper emotional level because my needs and my emotions aren't being considered. So it doesn't work. And when we have this conversation, I don't say things like, you don't listen, you're this, you're that. That creates disconnection. When I say, okay, we can have a conversation, let's schedule it for this time, I can give you half an hour, I put a boundary on it, but I still let them know they're valued. I just can't drop everything for every client or every friend or every family member at a moment's notice. And if I do that, I create my own monster. That becomes the expectation. And so when I get 10 phone calls all happening at 4 a.m. because these people are used to me showing up for them, I can't provide quality interaction with 10 people at the same time. So I'm putting myself in a position where I will fail, they will feel let down, they will feel isolated and frustrated, and I will feel pissed off because I keep stepping up and being there for them and they're not giving me understanding, they're not giving me the same back, they're not the kind of person that I can call at 4 a.m. and say, oh, I'm having crisis, because their crisis matters more. Well, I can't, I'm this, I'm that. So they shut down that communication, that reciprocity, and the communication just gets further damaged. So again, healthy boundaries are not about it being all about you or your methodology. Healthy boundaries are knowing when you can't be there for them because your communication doesn't work. When you can't drop everything for them because you have multiple things going on. So the more we can explain this to people, the better they can understand and not feel harmed. But it's just matter of fact. When I approach child therapy, when I bring up problems that are happening, I'm never emotional. I don't say, don't do that, hitting people hurts people and that's terrible. I try to bring empathy in. I try to say, how do you feel when that's happened to you? We have more reasonable and deeper discussions depending on the age of the child. So if we're talking with a young child, it really comes down to a very simple physical action and a reaction. Well, you hit me, someone will hit you. Decide whether you want to live in a world where we're all hitting and pulling from each other and see how that goes. And a lot of times you do. You have to be patient and step back and let them deal with the intrinsic consequences of those behaviors, because they're not capable of hearing you, and us just offering correction constantly does not create good relationships. That creates children who are tired of being labeled a certain thing. They're tired of feeling like no matter what they do, they're a failure, and they become more and more ostracized. They seek out more negative and destructive behaviors so that they can find community that actually accepts them, because in those communities often people will encourage negative behaviors, and really it's not about the behavior, it's about the encouragement. They're seeking the encouragement and the acceptance. It really has little to do with the behavior. So again, identifying what somebody gets out of the behavior can really help you figure out how to change the behavior and work together. And that also includes adjusting your own behavior and adjusting your own communication so that you can find middle ground. So communication and boundaries, we will discuss them further as we dive into more of these series. And I'm open to comments, questions, and let's do this together and start trying to change some of how we approach life so that we can be happy, healthy people who are not just seeking gratification, validation, ego tripping, having our beauty assessed, having our wealth assessed, having those labels put on us. They're not healthy, they're not helpful. Some people have more items, some people are more pleasing to the eye, to some people, not everyone. There's somebody out there for everybody. Somebody enjoys a talker, some people enjoy quiet people. We just need to understand different people have different needs, and we can't assume everybody functions the way we function, enjoys what we enjoy, or experiences life the way we do. The way to fix this is having communication, understanding their experiences, understanding how that makes them who they are, and being willing to compromise in how you work together to have effective communication so that you can both feel heard, you can both feel safe, you can both feel accepted, and you can build community. And it starts with that. All right, guys, talk to you later. Bye.